For USCFootball.com, Connor Morrissette and Shotgun Spratling, we're here to recap the USC baseball season. Shotgun, it was a really great year under Andy Stankiewicz. USC makes the NCAA tournament for the first time in a decade. They win two games in the tournament, but then come up short against Oregon State, where if they had won one of those games, they would have advanced to the Super Regionals for the first time in 20 years. I guess we could start with those Oregon State games where it just looked like, to me, USC ran out of pitching and they didn't really hit very well either, so it's hard to blame it all on the pitching, but they just kind of ran out of gas. What do you think of those two games against Oregon State?
I mean, those two games show you where this program is at versus where a top five program is at. Oregon State is a team that got someone like Dax Whitney, a freshman that could have made 1.5 to $2 million in the draft to come to college. Oregon State is a place where Iva Arquette, who is going to be a top 10 pick in about a month and a half, they got him to transfer in from Washington. They're a destination program right now because of their development, because of their history the last 20 years that, basically, and it's interesting, they basically took USC's spot as the West Coast, kind of the torchbearer for the West Coast. They've won three national championships in the last 20 years. That's the most on the West Coast. They have been the premier program. Now, there's some other programs that have been really good. UCLA and Arizona and Stanford and, different times, some other programs have kind of popped up here and there in the last couple of decades. But 2005, Corvallis Super Regional, Oregon State beats Michael Gillespie's USC team. That was, USC had only been to the NCAA tournament once since then before this year. But that was kind of the changing of the guard. And I wrote about that a little bit for the LA Times. But that's kind of where it was. And so this was kind of an opportunity. It was like, okay, can USC maybe steal that back and maybe, have those reverse parallels with Oregon State? But I think you saw the last two games is just, USC doesn't have the depth of talent that Oregon State team had. Oregon State had someone like Trent Caraway, who's from J. Sarah High School. I think you probably covered him a little bit in high school. A guy that has struggled throughout much of this year. Got off to a really hot start, and there was a long lull in the middle of the season. He was batting 247. He went from batting leadoff. They put him in the three hole. Then they moved him to the five, to the six, to the eight, to the nine. So he's batting ninth in their lineup at the end of the regular season. And they bump him up a couple spots. And then he goes on an absolute tear in this. And that's someone at the bottom of the lineup who has struggled throughout the season. But that's how talented their players are. That someone can pop up like that in a given weekend. He hits five homers in five games out there at the Corvallis Regional to get most outstanding player. And they fell into a hole early. Oregon State did, and they worked their way back. But they could still, even though they were playing they had played an extra game than USC had. They were playing two games in one day on Sunday, and had to beat USC in that second game. They still were able to run out arms that were each arm that USC faced in those two games. They faced six pitchers. They each at least hit 94 miles an hour. Eric Segura comes in throwing 97 on Monday. Caden Hunter did that on Saturday. It was the hardest he had thrown all season. He was up at 96, 97 in that early inning to get USC out of a big jam against St. Mary's. But that's the rarity at USC rather than the normal. And so I think that's one of the things is just their depth of talent showed out, and that's why they were able to win that, which shows USC, to me, that says, okay, now you can compare yourself to where the premier program, one of the premier programs, if you want to, just put it boilerplate, at least one of the premier programs on the West Coast. If you want to be at that same level, that's what it needs to look like. So now, USC suffers an injury with Braden Dowd, and, that's a big blow to them. Whereas you feel like if Oregon State suffers one injury, it wouldn't have the same impact that it had for USC. So I think that was what was the biggest takeaway for me in these two games for USC is just seeing where you are compared to an elite team. USC comes in as a 3 seed. I know USC has the heritage, the history from pre 20 years ago, but in the last 20 years, that's not the same program that they've been. And so they're trying to build, and they've taken steps along the way, especially under Andy Stankiewicz these last 3 years, being so close for 2 years, being one win away, basically, the last 2 years and not getting in. And then this year, now they're one win away. Instead of being one win away from a regional, they were one win away from a super regional. Now can you take that next step over this offseason? And the fact been taking those small steps, they've been developing the players without a field, with all the travel concerns they've had to do, with now moving to the Big Ten, all these different challenges have been along the way. It tells a ton about Andy Stankiewicz and that staff. And so now you wonder, all right, you got a crown jewel to sell on the recruiting trail this offseason. Can they bring in some guys in the portal? Can they retain their guys and keep everyone home to open up that new Dato field next year? I think the future is very bright, but I think it was very telling in those last two games to see where exactly USC stacked up on the national landscape.
I definitely agree with all of that. And it was a disappointing end losing 14-1 and then 9-0. But it wasn't like all season when USC played really good teams that would happen. They beat UCLA a couple times. They had a win against Vanderbilt. Do you think it was just the wrong time playing the 4 games in a row? That's kind of what it had to be, right? Where if USC had more rest, they could have thrown Caden Aoki potentially as a starter, and maybe Braden Dowd is able to come back. That kind of, I think, was the differentiator. Where if you play a one-off game, USC might have won, but playing Oregon State after playing 2 games before, that's when they sort of run, I guess.
Yeah, and I think if USC would have played Oregon State in that game too, you would have felt more comfortable. It's just USC all season felt like they had two starters, and then there was kind of a black hole on Sunday. Now those two starters kind of shifted as the season progressed. Caden Hunter was dealing with a knee injury, basically since that Penn State game, and he struggled since then until the last couple of chances there at the end of the season. And Mason Edwards came on. Those guys basically flipped roles. But otherwise, like it was a constant struggle to find someone outside of Caden Aoki to be a starter. And I think that was the biggest thing. So the interesting thing, the thing I love about the way the college baseball playoffs are set up is that you're in a 4-team regional where you could play 3 games and win straight through, or you may be forced to play 5, like Oregon State did. But it challenges the depth of the roster. It challenges the depth of the roster. Then you go to a super regional and it's a 3-game series. Now that's what you play all season, but it challenges the high impact stars of a roster. You can have 2 really good pitchers and hey, they can get you through in a super regional. And then you do the same thing in Omaha, which I really like the fact that it challenges you in 2 different ways. I know there's a lot of people out there that want to change the format and try to make it all series and different things like that. I like the way it does challenge you, but I think you saw Oregon State, the depth of their talent, the fact that James DeCrimmer comes in, a freshman who's the max he had thrown is 4 innings. It was his second career start, and he's a redshirt freshman, but he's in there throwing 95 with a nasty, slider, nasty changeup, both of them, 83 mile an hour, and just difficult to hit. He throws 5 innings. They can bring Segura in, the guy. So both teams brought their Friday guy back, and Segura's in there throwing 97, whereas Caden Aoki's in there throwing 89. So like that was kind of the difference in the two programs. Just seeing the depth of talent there, I think that was the biggest thing. USC just didn't have enough arms, and part of that is they lost 3 really big arms early in the season. With Fisher Johnson being a guy they expected to get some long relief out of, a veteran guy and having a back injury, and then 2 Tommy John surgeries, including Mikey Ebner, who, was a Cape Cod League All-Star. We're expecting him to be a weekend rotation guy. Slow start for him because he had a different injury, and then he ends up having to have Tommy John surgery, and same thing with Garen Rizzo. So, maybe if they had those guys, maybe that's the difference in that. Maybe, if Andrew Johnson doesn't have it early, they can go immediately to someone else. But you felt like you had to ride with Caden Hunter, ride with Andrew Johnson a little bit longer than maybe you wanted to, just because didn't necessarily have a ton of options behind them that you felt like they had just come in and shut someone down.
What letter grade would you give for the 2025 USC baseball season?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I mean, it's definitely a maybe an A minus, like A. Like I feel like that they, with the challenges they had, like I just mentioned, some of those injuries, getting to a postseason was great. If they would have got to it, like if they would have got to Super Regional, I think that would have been an A plus. So I'd say this is somewhere in between an A and A minus. Obviously, there's some disappointment there at the end because of the way they hit with runners in scoring position, the way they hit with runners on. I mean, they were 1 for 13, I think, with runners in scoring position on Sunday against Oregon State, and then 1 for 12, I think it was on Sunday with runners in scoring position, 0 for 13 with runners on base, and hit into 5 double plays on Monday, which is why you get shut out 9-0 in that one. So they had some opportunities, but just couldn't capitalize. And hey, they had some of their guys up there. Bryce Martin-Grudzielanek had been so good for them all year, just struggled in the last couple of games, and that they moved the lineup a little bit. A team with a deeper lineup that is a little bit more talented, like Oregon State's is, someone else is able to step up. And USC just didn't necessarily have that. They did a great job all season of when someone was struggling. Ethan Hedges was struggling for a little bit, someone else would pick him up. But in the biggest games, it's maximized even more. And so Ethan Hedges was really the only guy that was consistently successful for them in this regional. And I think that because he's the most talented player, you see the difference in just the overall high end talent on the roster.
I definitely agree with the A minus. Not being in the tournament for a decade to get to the tournament, that is significant. With the transfer portal, it's so hard to talk about next season. We don't know
True.
exactly what's going to happen, but what I do like is that Andy Stankiewicz has come in and USC's won 30, at least 30 games in every season. Like, it's clear that he's building something now. If USC isn't able to retain guys, it could look different next season. But with Dado Field being remodeled and just new now, that's huge. The fact that USC made the NCAA tournament last season, now I know it's still going on, but looking ahead to next season, that's huge. They have some building blocks here. Let's talk about next season, Shotgun. Who are the players who USC needs to keep? Where are they weak? Where do they need to improve? I'm throwing a lot at you, but just in general, I guess we could start with the key guys who will hopefully be coming back. What's the core of the team look like for next year?
Yeah, so they are going to lose some big pieces because they probably will lose some guys through the draft. USC goes 37-23 this year. You mentioned three straight 30 win seasons. They had, I think, two since 2005 before Andy Stankiewicz got there. That tells you the consistency they've had, that they're able to find ways to win when they haven't had as much talent. And now this year was kind of the first year where they had their guys. It'll definitely be that way next year. Next year will be all their recruits that they brought in. Now a lot of the guys, some of the older guys on this team were transfers they brought in, but there are still a couple of holdovers from the previous staff, like Ethan Hedges and whatnot. So next year will be much more of their own. Now the guys they will lose. They will definitely be losing Ethan Hedges to the draft. They will likely lose Bryce Martin-Grudzielanek. He was drafted late last year. I expect both those guys to into the draft. I'm blanking off the top of my head if Bryce Martin-Grudzielanek has another year or not. I don't think he does, or I believe he does. I don't know. I think he's going to get drafted anyway, so I don't think he'll be around. Then the question becomes: is there anyone else? Does anyone else get drafted? Caden Hunter is the big one that you have your eye on. I mean, maybe Brody Purcell does as well. I don't think so. But last year you saw a couple of the USC relievers late get kind of taken. Xavier Martinez and blanking on the closer's name off the top of my head, but they went to the Mets. But they had a couple guys went late that they thought that they were going to get back. So, Brody Purcell may be a guy to keep an eye on. But other than that, they should get everybody back. Now the question will be, when does Michael Ebner able to come back? I talked with him a little bit this week. He's coming off that Tommy John. He's still got 8 months probably of rehab to go. So will he be available next year? He should be back or in mid season. Does he pitch at all? That'll be a question mark. But the biggest one is one that people may not know about. Is Caden Aoki. He's a senior, right? He actually petitioned, talked with him early in the season, and said he was going to talk to the NCAA about petitioning to get an extra year. I was told this weekend that that was granted by the NCAA, so he will have an extra year. Now, will he use it at USC? That will be the question mark. He has done a ton for this program, so if he goes somewhere else, there should be no hard feelings from USC fans. But does he want to pitch for USC, or does he potentially? I think he's a guy that someone in the SEC, the ACC would give him some money. Now, does USC have any NIL money to match that? Do they have any money to keep him around? That type of thing. Does he want to continue to build his legacy at USC? That's a potential. So there's a lot of factors that could go into it, but that is a key one. So, is there money there for him? Does he want to go challenge himself in a different way in the ACC or SEC versus the Big Ten? That could be also something. And Kane Aoki we've had him on the show before on the Dato Download. He is a huge college baseball fan. He is the gym rat. He's checking box scores and stuff for other games and whatnot. He can tell you about this random player from this other school. So I think that with the way the landscape has shifted to the Southeast in the last, half decade, then that may be something that is a big allure to him. So we'll see what he ends up doing. That is a huge one for USC because they got him back. He's been their best pitcher for 2 years running. If they can get him back, or 3 years, 3 years running actually. So to get him back would be really huge, and especially this year, he threw 97 innings. The last 2 years, he's been hampered by some injuries, been up and down. There's been missed some time. He's thrown around 50 to 60 innings this year, throwing almost 100 innings, and he was a guy that was willing to take the ball in 1 day's rest and go and face that murderer's row that the heart of Oregon State's lineup had become, and he struck three of those guys out. They did give up a home run to Trent Caraway on one of them, but he got 4 outs for them, and he probably would have went back out there. And Andy Stankiewicz said that he kind of looked at him and said, I'll keep going if you want. And he was like, no, it's time to give the ball to somebody else. If we're going to come back, then someone else is going to have to take us there. They weren't going to risk his arm or anything. So that's a huge one. Now retention becomes a big question for Mason Edwards. Big time prospects, and just the stuff is there. Could be up to 95 from the left side. He's a guy that I think other programs will be sending back channel messages to try to get to go somewhere else. I think that's a big one for USC. And then on the offensive side, does someone try to reach out to Braden Dowd or something like that? Just the pieces that were really good for USC. I think I'm really high on the freshman class that they have. I don't think anyone is going to go anywhere, but you never know. With someone, Augie Lopez or Maddox Risky or Maximo Martinez, guys that saw some time but were not consistent starters, do they think, hey, the grass is greener somewhere else and I can go and start somewhere? I've not heard any rumors or anything about anyone in that regard, but those are all big pieces that will be contributors next year, I think.
Who do you think has the potential to be that best hitter? Is it Adrian Lopez? Is it Braden Dowd, assuming that they can hang on to those guys? Ethan Hedges was just so valuable for them this year. It's obviously challenging to lose your best hitter. Who has best hitter potential out of the returners for next season?
I mean, he didn't do a ton this year. He only had 3 homers, 14 RBIs. I love the swing of Augie Lopez, the lefty. I called his home run that he hit in the regional. I said, Covarrubias before him hit a chopper. I was like, oh, a chopper and a homer. And he hits one the next pitch. So I really like his swing. I think he's a guy that could be really good for USC. But Adrian Lopez has got the best track record at this point. Or actually, I would say Braden Dowd has the best track record. Adrian Lopez produced the best swings this year. Just his ability to go, into the right center gap and drive the ball the other way, but also turn on some pitches and stuff. I think Braden Dowd is quite possibly going to be the most important of the returners, if assuming Ethan Hedges and Bryce Martin-Grudzielanek are gone, because he can be the leadoff hitter and set the table. And he's been clutch for USC as well. He had a couple of big, ninth inning homers and stuff to either tie the game or give USC a lead in some Big Ten games. So the fact that, he's got that Midwest background too. So you like having him in the Big Ten as well. I think those are 2 guys or 3 guys that I think are going to be really important for USC. I also really like the freshman Maximo Martinez. I liked his swings in the regional. Now it's just, making more consistent contact for him. Did have some strikeout issues this season. But yeah, there's some really, really intriguing pieces on this roster for USC, and they're only going to get better in the transfer portal and with the freshmen that are coming in as well.
Do you have any idea on the freshmen who are coming in, any early impact guys? And then with the transfer portal, it just shocking to me. It sounds like with USC, you can never have enough pitching. So if they could add some pitching, that's huge. And then are they in a position to say no if a good player wants to come to their team? I just feel like if they can plug holes from the portal and a guy wants to come, do it. So that's sort of how I see the portal unfolding. Like it's not like they have these glaring needs outside of the pitching, but like if you could get a guy who's going to make your roster better, you do it. Is that how they're going to recruit, or are there glaring holes in the lineup that I'm not seeing?
I mean, I think that you can always get better, and whatnot. I think that there is a freshman out there that could be a game changer for them. Unfortunately, I think he's probably going to be a top 5 round pick, and that's Tate Southesine. Now, his brother T is already on the team as a pitcher. His younger brother Troy is committed in the 2026 class. So could they get Tate Southesine to come to campus? I think that would be a huge pick for them. The kid, he's out of Henderson, Nevada. Just a super smooth shortstop. Line drives everywhere. When I saw him last summer in the area codes, so that's a big one. Diego Velasquez is another one from Crespi that is a guy that can come in 6'2" shortstop. we'll see where they line him up and where they put him. He's the guy. You got Blake Sable's younger brother, Jarrett, is coming in as well from Aliso Niguel. So those are some pieces, that I know the names of off the top of my head. Cameron Fawcett is another one from Newberry Park that I liked last year. And then an intriguing one from up in Northern California. I'm gonna butcher his last name, so I apologize. I think he has an Indian background. I think he's Indian descent. So his last name is Kasanagatu. So Rohan Kasanagatu, I think is how you pronounce it. But he has this, I believe it was a split finger. He has a unique pitch that he was throwing in the area codes that really caught my eye. I would have to go back and check my notes to see exactly what it was, but I believe it was a very, very low spin split finger that just kind of got to the plate and just whoop, and just fell off the tracks there. So that's a guy that could come in, and if you have a unique pitch like that, even if you aren't ready to be a starter, you can be a guy that can come in and strike some guys out of the bullpen or something like that if you can find some consistency. So that's another name to keep an eye on. But yeah, we'll see what the draft does with some of those high end guys from the recruits and whatnot, and we'll see how things shift with the transfer portal. There's the potential of the rosters being shrunk from 40 down to 34, so that could end up pushing some guys out either that are currently on the roster or that are high school commits as well. So those are all things to keep an eye on in that regard. But yeah, USC, I'm not saying there will be a gaping hole. It's not like Ethan Hedges coming in this year. Everyone was like, oh, that's going to be an All-American. Bryce Martin-Grudzielanek was drafted last year, so there were some expectations there. But no one in this lineup you would look at and be like, "Oh yeah, that guy's going to carry them. That guy's going to be a monster." On the pitching side, you could say that about Caden Aoki. You could say, "Hey, that guy's got a consistent track record already," but you didn't really have that, which again goes to show to me the development from this coaching staff. They've done such a phenomenal job year over year of developing guys and getting guys better. And USC does not have a junior college commit. I asked Sean Allen, I was like, "You got another one of those? Got another pitcher of this junior college commit?" Because they had Watson last year and then Caden Hunter this year. They've both been really big for them. But you never know. There could be someone pop up late that's got a decommitment or something like that. And if USC can find an older vet like that to come in from the JUCO ranks or from the transfer portal, they could play a big role.
Is it even worth asking you about the expectations for next season when so much is up in the air?
To open a brand new stadium and have fun. That I'm really curious who they're going to bring in for the opening day. I suggested to Willie Bloomquist at Arizona State, because of the rivalry that Arizona State and USC have had and the fact that they're not in a conference now together, that they should have that happen. But I don't think it's going to play out in that, especially because Andy Stankiewicz coached at Grand Canyon, which is right beside Arizona State, and there was some battles there. So I thought that would be a great opening salvo, for the stadium and whatnot. But I'm really curious to see who they bring in for opening weekend. But just expectations is to continue to build. You've taken that step. Take the step to get into a regional. All right, can you do it again? Can you take that next step potentially from being one win away for 2 years from getting in a regional? Now you're one win away from getting a super regional. Can you do it again next year, or even go ahead and take that next step and be, into a super regional? Andy Stankiewicz, when I talked to him afterwards in the post-game presser, said, "Hey, in my heart, I believe we will be in the super regional." He said it didn't happen this year, but we're taking the right steps. We're doing all the right things, and it's going to happen.
You love a confident head coach. This has been a post-mortem on the season, so I want to wrap up with this. What's been the best memory from this USC baseball season? Is it Caden Aoki's outing against TCU? Is it a win against UCLA when a lot of people didn't think USC was able to do that? You followed USC baseball closer than anyone, Shotgun. What are some of the best moments from the year, and does anything stand out to you? Is there a top best moment?
I mean, the fact that I wasn't covering all the games makes it a little bit more difficult but because sometimes I'm covering a game and then I'm watching the highlights, or, I'm not necessarily watching it as it unfolds. But a couple of games that definitely stand out to me. The big win over Vanderbilt, a Saturday afternoon game. Vanderbilt ends up being the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament. So you've proven you can beat the best team in the country going into the NCAA tournament. And they did that. Then you go into Big Ten play. I just thought, not necessarily the individual moments, but the fact that they were able to go on the road at Michigan, at Indiana, at Penn State, at Minnesota and win all those series. Every time you went east, you went and proved yourself. And the biggest one in that was the dramatic comeback against Indiana, where you're down 12-3, you score 10 runs, and win that game in the ninth inning. And Braden Dowd had a big homer in that one. Just an incredible comeback. I think that's one of the biggest ones that stands out. And then you go to the UCLA series, the fact that you had a chance in the opener and you couldn't get over the hump. You had the base, I think it was the bases loaded or two guys on, down by a run, couldn't get the big hit. But you bounce back, you get it, and then you rally from being down early against UCLA on Sunday and win that one kind of going away, and really was a huge statement for USC. Now, they didn't finish great in the Big Ten regular season, but some dramatic games in the Big Ten tournament. The win at over Washington with Ethan Hedges' dramatic slide coming in, which likely solidified them in the tournament because they end up being a last four team to get in. And then, the first two games of the Corvallis Regional really stood out because of the way Caden Aoki pitched in that first one against TCU, a team that a lot of people picked to win that Corvallis Regional. And then, I know it's just St. Mary's, but that was a quality St. Mary's team, and to be able to beat them. And I thought Caden Hunter coming in and the effort he gave, coming in just throwing fireballs out there from compared to what he had thrown previously, getting out that huge jam in the eighth inning, will be really memorable as well. So that's probably 4 or 5 games in there, but just some dramatic moments for them throughout the season and something to build on. This is definitely a season they can continue to build on. They will lose some pieces, but they'll get some more pieces back, and they should be able to add a couple pieces hopefully through the transfer portal. Someone like Jack Messier, who came in from TCU, was just kind of cast off from TCU, comes in and becomes a contributor for them in the outfield and fills in when Kevin Takeuchi gets hurt. Looking forward to seeing when Kevin Takeuchi can come back as well. He did have surgery on the shoulder. Talked with him this week. He's in good spirits, and is looking forward to getting back hopefully before next season as well.
Certainly a very memorable season, as you just laid out for us. A lot to like about how USC baseball did this season. Coming up a little short against Oregon State. That was frustrating, but hey, the proof is in the pudding. This team is taking steps in the right direction. The future is definitely bright. For Shotgun Spratling, I'm Connor Morrissette. This has been a wrap on USC Baseball's 2025 season. Stick with USCFootball.com for more.